For generations, The Wizard of Oz has been remembered as one of the most magical films ever made, a colorful journey filled with music, wonder, and hope. It's a story we associate with childhood, innocence, and the timeless idea that there's no place like home. But behind that bright Technicolor fantasy was a reality far darker than anyone could have imagined. Because while audiences were falling in love with Oz, the people creating it were living through something closer to a nightmare. Actors were injured. Sets became dangerous. And one of the most iconic films in history nearly destroyed the very people who brought it to life. But perhaps the most chilling mystery of all isn't what happened on set. It's what MGM didn't want you to see. Because hidden behind the finished version of The Wizard of Oz was a longer, darker cut, filled with scenes so strange, so intense, that the studio chose to erase them from history. What exactly was in that version, and why was it removed? Welcome to Royal Time of Hollywood. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on the Oz you were never meant to see, the war that created Oz. To understand how things went so wrong, you have to go back to 1937. That was the year Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, created by Walt Disney, changed Hollywood forever. It proved that fantasy films weren't just viable, they could dominate the box office. At MGM, panic set in. Studio head Louis B. Mayer knew they needed something bigger, something more spectacular, something that could compete with Disney's growing empire. Their answer was The Wonderful Wizard of Oz by L. Frank Baum. But from the very beginning, the production was plagued with problems. The rights alone cost $75,000, a massive amount during the Great Depression. And as the budget climbed toward $3 million, the pressure became unbearable. Directors were hired and fired. Scripts were rewritten again and again by more than a dozen writers. Entire scenes were filmed, scrapped, and reimagined. It wasn't just chaotic. It was unstable, casting chaos and hidden struggles. Before Judy Garland became Dorothy, MGM had other plans. They wanted Shirley Temple, the biggest child star in America. Negotiations even involved a potential studio deal with 20th Century Fox and Clark Gable. But the deal collapsed. Another contender, Deanna Durbin, was considered, but ultimately rejected. That left Garland. At just 16 years old, she was forced into tight corsets to make her appear younger. Studio executives controlled her diet, her appearance, and eventually her energy levels. To keep up with long filming hours, she was given pills to stay awake and pills to sleep. It was a system that would follow her for the rest of her life. Meanwhile, casting changes continued behind the scenes. Ray Bolger insisted on playing the Scarecrow, pushing Buddy Ebsen into the role of the Tin Man. That decision would almost cost Ebsen his life. The set that became a danger zone. The making of The Wizard of Oz wasn't just difficult, it was dangerous. The Tin Man's poison. Buddy Ebsen's silver makeup contained pure aluminum dust. With every breath, he inhaled particles that coated his lungs. Within days, he was hospitalized, struggling to breathe, placed in an oxygen tent for weeks. He never returned to the film. His replacement, Jack Haley, used a safer paste, but even that carried risks of infection. If you're enjoying this video, make sure to check out the other stories and shocking updates on our channel. We've covered many incredible celebrity journeys, tragic endings, and untold Hollywood secrets that you don't want to miss. Binge watch our previous videos to discover more surprising facts, emotional stories, and where your favorite stars are today. Your support helps us bring you more powerful content like this, so don't forget to explore, watch more, and stay tuned for the next video. The Witch on Fire. Margaret Hamilton's most famous scene nearly turned fatal. During a fiery exit, a trapdoor malfunctioned, leaving her exposed to flames. Her face and hands were severely burned. Because her green makeup contained toxic copper, doctors had to scrub her wounds aggressively to prevent poisoning. She spent weeks recovering. The heat of Technicolor. The magic of Technicolor came at a cost. Massive lights pushed set temperatures above 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Actors wore heavy costumes under intense heat. Bert Lahr, dressed in a real lion skin, sweated so heavily that his costume had to be dried every night. What audiences saw as magic felt like survival. the jitterbug, and the lost footage. But the real mystery lies in what didn't make it to the final film. The original cut of The Wizard of Oz was longer, nearly 20 minutes longer, and far stranger. At the center of it was a sequence known as the jitterbug. In this scene, the Wicked Witch sends a bizarre insect-like creature to attack Dorothy and her friends. Once bitten, they're forced into an uncontrollable, frantic dance, laughing, shaking, and collapsing in exhaustion. It was chaotic, almost disturbing. MGM spent $80,000 on the sequence, but after test screenings, they cut it entirely.
Why?
Some believed it felt too intense for children. Others feared it would quickly feel outdated. Today, only fragments remain: home footage, audio recordings, and mystery. Scenes that vanished into history. The darker version of Oz didn't stop there. A bizarre scene where the Tin Man becomes a living beehive. A grand victory parade through Emerald City, cut for time. Darker dialogue that made the witch even more terrifying. Piece by piece, MGM trimmed the film, removing anything that felt too strange, too long, or too unsettling. What remained was polished, safe, but incomplete. The song that almost never was. Even the most iconic moment in the film nearly disappeared. Over the Rainbow, sung by Judy Garland, was almost cut. Studio executives thought it slowed the film. Some even called it unnecessary. It took producer Mervyn Leroy to fight for its inclusion. Today, it's one of the most famous songs in film history. The Aftermath, a legacy with shadows. When The Wizard of Oz premiered in 1939, it wasn't an instant financial success. The high production cost meant the studio barely broke even. It wasn't until years later, through television broadcasts, that it became a cultural legend. But for the cast, the impact was lasting. Judy Garland struggled with addiction. Margaret Hamilton carried physical scars. And the film itself lost pieces of its original identity forever. Final thoughts. The Oz we never saw. Today, The Wizard of Oz is remembered as pure magic. But behind that magic lies a story of pressure, danger, and decisions that shaped what we see today. And somewhere out there, lost to time, exists a version of Oz that was darker, stranger, and perhaps more honest than the one we know. Which lost scene fascinates you the most? The chaotic jitterbug or the grand victory parade? Let us know in the comments below. And before you follow the yellow brick road back to Kansas, don't forget to like, subscribe to Royal Time of Hollywood, and hit that bell icon. Because the greatest stories in Hollywood are often the ones that were never meant to be told.